All right, for practice today, Charles Omenihu, knee will not practice. Christian McCaffrey, knee will not practice. Elijah, knee won't practice. Armstead, foot, ankle will be limited. Burford, ankle, limited or will not practice. We got to warm him up out there and see. Jimmy will be full. Deebo is limited with quad. Go ahead.
Do you say exactly what happened with Christian with his knee?
He just felt something in it, some irritation.
Something that you think that might keep him from playing on Sunday?
It's keeping him from going today. So I hope not.
What about Matthew's knee? That's a new one.
Same thing. Yep. He was sore after the game, but still sore, so got to be a little careful with it.
I think they've taken a little bit more time to look at some Dolphins tape and what Mike's been able to do down there. Is it what you expected? Are there some new flashes to things?
No, I mean, it's what we expected. I mean, he's doing a great job with his personnel. I mean, those two receivers, the speed they have and the good football players they are, combined with the speed of Raheem and the way that quarterback's playing. I mean, Tua's playing at an extremely high level. He's been doing it since the preseason, big time in week one, and hasn't fallen off at all. And they're doing a good job on defense, too.
You can't predict when an assistant might get plucked away from you, but how aware are you that when it might happen? And when did you think that for Mike?
I've gotten more aware of it the last few years. Mike was always the easiest because he was the first guy I was ever with when I was a receiver coach at 26. He was the QC, but they put him in my room. So wherever I went, except a couple of years he was out, he was always my assistant. So you're always grooming him and working on things together. And then guy who replaced him was Matt LaFleur, got a couple of years with him, then got one with Sean, then Matt's brother, Mike. So you've always had those guys you're grooming. And when I came here, I thought I had some guys that were younger that weren't going to get taken for a while, but it seemed to happen a lot faster than I expected. So that's always what I'm thinking about. Like, you never know when it's going to happen, especially when our defense has success, who they're going to try to take with them. So we're always trying to get some guys in here that you can groom and you can teach. It's not just about teaching it, but guys also need to go through some stuff with you too, which makes them the most prepared. And I started doing that a while ago. When I moved Bobby Slowick over to offense when he was on defense, moved Brian Fleury a number of years ago. He was a D-line coach when I was in Cleveland. Solon brought him in to be a QC from Miami. And then I thought he had the potential to really help us on offense, so I moved him there about 4 years ago, I think. Did the same thing with Clay Kubiak this offseason. So it's something that came up pretty fast in our first few years here, and something I always got to think about.
Were you watching Mike's pressers that were different, and did you have an idea that might catch people's attention? Do you think it helped them maybe get the job?
I don't know. I mean, you have to ask that with their owner because it's each lemonade stand's different. That's kind of how I see it. They run it however they want. So I bet it did, because it seemed like they liked him. Obviously, they hired him. So I'm sure they didn't dislike it. But Mike, that's Mike's personality. I never knew how he would do in those press conferences or how he'd come off. That's how he is all the time to us, even a little bit worse probably. And it's an acquired taste sometimes, or sometimes throws people off a little bit, but I thought he put it together real good and did it in a funny way, and was always entertaining in those press conferences.
It seems like when guys become head coaches, sometimes they feel like they have to act a certain way, but I mean, did you give him any advice on just being himself? Because it looks like even as a head coach in the elevator role, he's just being who he is.
I mean, probably. I mean, I don't think he's ever asked me specifically that way, but I guarantee my advice to everyone is always you better be yourself. I just think no matter what it is, especially in sports, but I would think anywhere in the world, you're around someone a little more than just here and there. Everyone can see the reality of someone or the realness. And if you ever try to be someone you're not as a head coach role, whoever it is, media, coaches, players, fans, they're going to end up eating you alive. You got to be yourself, and you can't keep up with acting.
You heard the other day that you were not surprised that he's having the success that he's having right now. In the offseason, when they started accumulating the speed, guys like Hill and Mostert and all that, did you kind of see that this is coming? And what's it like watching kind of your offense executed with all of that speed? How much does it jump out on?
Oh, it's cool to watch. I mean, right when he got Tyreek, you knew how much that was going to help. I mean, just Tyreek's, there's a number of fast people in this league, and to me, he's different than everyone else probably ever. Just the physicality and speed he runs with. So just some of the things that they can do with him is cool to watch. But, you know, the question was watching Tua in the offense. And I wasn't totally sure of that. And I remember turning it on in the preseason and watching his first game, and I was like, wow, this guy looks totally different and looks very comfortable. And then turned it on week one, and I thought he was playing in week one as good as anyone in this league. And I don't think he's had a game not like that.
Have you guys kept in pretty close contact since he's been gone?
What's that?
Have you guys kept in pretty close contact since he left?
Probably as much as Mike and I can. I mean, we're both probably as bad a phone guys as anyone you could be around. But for Mike and I, I'd say yes.
Tua uniquely good? Like, what's unique about him?
The rhythm of his game, how quick he can get the ball off. He reminds me a lot of guy I was with earlier in my career, Matt Schaub. When that back foot hits, he knows where to look, and if someone's not there, he is hitching right to replace them and letting it rip. If that second one's not there, he's getting rid of it. You know, there's they have so much speed that they blow the top off stuff, which gets some people open underneath. Tua is, to me, the reason that they're leading the league in explosives, because he knows how to hit people over the middle. It's rarely deep. It's usually running and hitting these guys on the move, and there's some really open space with all that speed. And then the quarterback who can drop it over linebackers, who's not worried about safeties, and is doing that part of his game as high as anyone I've seen right now.
What was, in all your years with Mike McDaniel, what was the quality in him that you appreciated and kind of leaned on the most?
I mean, at first, you know, I didn't know him at all. Kubiak stuck me with him, put him in my office, and that's how it starts. But I mean, we were both young guys, and I'd done college, been in the league a little bit longer, and he was just really hungry, and he was a lot more educated in terms of he went to Yale, and I went to some good schools, but those 4 sports. So he was very well-read and typing everything up and stuff, and I was so much football, and he just soaked everything in, memorized everything, and whatever happened, he was someone I could always carry the conversation with, what's going on in the receiver room, really how I saw football, and he could soak it all in, and spent 3 years of that, went to quarterbacks, and he came with me to quarterbacks, and then I was the coordinator the third year, and he was doing everything me for a coordinator in the third year, so we had all the experience together, and then he ended up leaving, going to World XFL or something like that. And then when I got to Washington, bringing him back, it was just no one had been one-on-one with me that long. So that was kind of the neatest thing about it. And Mike, I'd always say he was our computer. Like what I say on this last year and this time, and Mike could always retain that stuff and was really good at it. And then we went through so much together. How different Washington was than Houston, just schematically, how many things that we had to change. I also think anytime you have a QC, those are the guys as a coordinator you depend on the most. You know, when you're a coordinator and the players come in, everyone goes to their offices and teaches the players. And then you go back in your room and you try to put a plan together. And there's not many people available that aren't in rooms coaching the tight ends or the O-line. And then you have a guy who's been breaking down the film all week, not just for his position, but for everything. So the coordinators are the guys you rely on. The QCs are the guys you rely on more as a coordinator, because they're seeing the whole thing as much as you can. They're not just preparing a position. And Mike was always in that type of role. You know, I think 2 years he coached receivers for me. But all the other time, I mean, he was a great position coach, but he was more valuable in the other way. I don't want a guy tied down to one position. That's kind of what happened to me when I brought Mike LaFleur here. I put him with receivers the first year, but then there's too many times, so I'm asking some stuff about the red zone and things on Thursday night, and they're in their world on what Bourne's doing or somebody. I'm like, man, I need you to help me in this area. So sometimes guys want to be position coaches fast, and I always say QC might be the best thing for you, and sometimes it's vice versa, but there's different paths to do stuff, and when you do stay in those roles longer, you do get to learn more. You don't just go right to a position and focus just on that position. So I think that's stuff that really benefited Mike, and that's why he was the one guy I was always communicating with so consistently over the years.
Coach, how much can his personality or his humor kind of galvanize a coaching staff or players when it's a very serious job, you guys are so focused, but how can that kind of break it up and kind of help the chemistry of the team?
I mean, it's about being yourself. If things are going well, then your personality's yourself, then it's really good. If things are going bad and your personality's like that, then, you know, it might annoy some people, or it might say, oh, nope, they're too lackadaisical. So it's more about coaching right, putting the plan together and being honest with everybody and being yourself, then you don't deviate. And the reasons are what happened on the field. When you start getting into that being because of people's personalities and stuff, I think that's a little far-fetched. I think a lot of other variables come into that, and that's just a bonus.
How much does having an elite defense change the way that you look at offensive play calling? Are you more likely to play it safe because you know you got a defense that can stop people, or do you still want to be aggressive, or how do you break that down?
I look at it as trying to win the game. What's the best way to win the game? I think that's stuff that I've definitely gotten better at and learned more at as becoming a head coach as opposed to offensive play caller. I did that for 9 years before becoming a head coach, and you are so responsible for one thing. You don't watch the other side of the ball. You really don't even know what's going on during the game. You're just responsible to keep moving and trying to get points, and that's how you call it. And since becoming a head coach, I started out that way. But then you start to see how to win games a little bit better. And our goal here was to build such a good defense. I thought we had that our third year. And I remember coming out into that third year having a plan on really how I wanted to do it because of the defense that we thought. And you learn from that, and before you knew it, we were 8-0. And then I thought our offense had some games that we had to get going and had to be aggressive. But you try to decide that based on the outcome of the game. I look at sometimes like the Chargers game and stuff, or you got a chance to go, but there's no way they're beating us if we get those 40 runs. That's how I feel, the way our defense is playing. There comes a time in that New Orleans game when you can see your defense, and we missed a couple there in the red zone where it's like, all right, they score right here, it's 13-7. I know exactly what we're doing. We got to win this. We can't give it back to them one possession. But then we hold them again. And you look at the clock and you think about where your team's at, and you're like, what's the best way to win this game? And that comes a lot clearer, I think, as you have to look at the whole big picture.
Escape technique that Croft used against the Cardinals on Deebo's run. Is your understanding that the 49ers came up with that? And then a follow-up to that is Deebo's run against the Saints in the fourth quarter 2019, the first time you used it?
I think it was, because we call it dope. There was a song we listened to a lot at the time, so I do remember saying that a lot after the game. But, I don't know if we were the first to do it. The skate is selling like you're running counter the other way. And when a guard pulls and a guy goes, backer's got to go. You got to change the numbers over there. I remember a goal line play back in the day Paul Hackett taught me it was a man coverage, and the guy keying the tight end who would go back. As soon as he did, he would run and go meet him over there, and you could do a little keeper where you could fake that and come it out and throw to him. So that's been done forever. The Rams do it a lot. We've done it. That's really the same idea, but instead of doing that, we're having them lead block because they're ignoring Deebo. I doubt we were the first to do it, but you see it off passes and you think of a way to do it off of a run, and that's kind of how everything builds up. It's not the most creative thing in the world. It has to do with a run that you see, a run that you know, or a play action off of that, how they're defending fronts, how they're playing man, how they're playing zone, and they're getting good. Our fullback over there, our tight end, and blowing this play up, what could slow that guy down? And that's kind of what you look at, and that's, to me, every single play. It has to do with, people in this league tee off. I don't care who it is, just they're going to get after you. So how do you get guys to slow down, or how do you get them to tee off and trick them and get people open the other way?
You mentioned the assistants you brought, you thought you might keep for a while, maybe lost them a little quicker than you would have imagined. How do you identify future candidates? I know it's specific things, but how have you found yourself saying, okay, this is the qualities that I'm looking for when I'm replacing these staffers?
Usually I like someone I've seen on the staff, like other places I've been when I didn't get to hire staffs. You get to see people's work ethic, kind of what drives them. It's not just, there's two days, like, man, this guy would be good with the players, and man, this guy could teach a player, or man, this guy is extremely smart and can just soak everything in, and he can type everything up, he can break everything down, he understands every blitz, every formation, he can memorize all this stuff. Who can do both of those? There's so many different variations of stuff. There's so many players that I've coached, and I can't tell you there's a number of guys that the last time I see him when I end up having to cut him, I try to tell them, man, if you want to stop playing, like I really believe you're made to coach. And you have to get in here as a QC and learn stuff, but you're extremely smart. I love how you picked our stuff up, and I love your personality. And if you're passionate about this, and if you have a wife, she understands what you're getting into. Why don't you come do this? And then they usually snap at me and say, you don't think I could play anymore? But then like 3 years later, they usually check up. But there's stuff like that. You see so many things. I mean, there's so many different qualities on how to build a staff. Coordinators and stuff are just a little bit different because they can't be in too big of a hurry either. There's so many processes that if you skip a step, you can see it in guys, in my opinion, later in their careers. So I like guys who can do it the normal way where they're just breaking down stuff and listening to everybody and soaking stuff in, and guys who also don't mind the pressure on them. And we're not always going to be nice. We try to be. There's going to be a lot of pressure. You're not going to get many pats on the back, and you just got to grind and hope it works out for you one day.
JP Mason got a lot of support from the team after he had those few runs at the end of the game. Is that more of a result of his work ethic and what he's been doing at practice, or just the locker room and being supportive?
I think they were impressed with how he looked running the ball. I think it reminded them of how he went in the preseason for a couple games, and you could feel him from the sidelines. Those guys have been waiting for their opportunities, and then we had 2 guys go down, and he was ready for it. And putting him there at the end of the game, when the game was still tight. I mean, there's 6 minutes and it was a 13-point game. I mean, a guy who hasn't been in that much, I'd like to not put that pressure on him. I'd like to keep our vets out there holding onto the ball and stuff. But our guys were a little banged up, and so we put Mason in, and I'm real glad we did. I mean, he held onto that ball great. There was no way he was fumbling it. But not only did he do that, but he moved the chains when it wasn't always blocked to move the chains. And I think that's what the players noticed on the sidelines. And I think the defense was really happy they didn't have to go back out there again. Thanks, guys.